Aloha, I'm Representative Kymberly Pine, and thank you for joining us for this Time with Kymberly Pine. And today we have Chef Ed Kenney, who's the owner of Town and Downtown.
Right.
We're so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
We today are going to be talking about promoting our local agriculture and food sustainability. And we do have a bill in the legislature right now that does talk about this and ask the Department of Agriculture to make this a priority. So Chef, tell me about what's going on in the food industry. I know that it started with the Hawaii regional cuisine 20 years ago, where 12 chefs got together and said, we're going to promote Hawaii all the way, and you're part of that next generation that's doing the same.
Yeah, I first got to just give all the credit in the world to those original 12. And Alan, Roy, they're all still doing incredible work, and they've really paved the way for, as you refer to, the next generation to come in and carry the torch. But there's this awareness, I think, globally, or at least nationally, about people wanting to know where their food comes from and the choices that they make and how it affects the greater whole. And you've got books like The Omnivore's Dilemma. You've got farmers markets popping up on every corner. You've got movies like Food Inc. So there's just this groundswell. Two nights ago, there was the premiere of a locally produced film called Ingredients by Bob Bates. And it really talks about this local food movement and how people are coming together, getting reconnected to where the food comes from, and making a change. So it's an exciting time.
Well, let's talk about how bad things are in Hawaii right now. We are not prepared for a natural disaster. We have food that will last no more than 10 days. If we have a disaster that also affects the coastlines of California and other areas where we get our food, we will only be able to feed our people for 10 days. 95% of our beef is imported. 67% of our fresh vegetables are imported. 65% fresh fruits imported, and 80% of all of our milk imported. And so I understand this goal is to reduce our imported food consumption by just 10%. And people don't know that that's going to create over 2,000 jobs just by doing that alone. And so how are you trying to promote this message through your restaurants?
Just one thing that we've got to look at it from a different lens is just 10% is double what we're doing now. So a lot of times we say we just got to increase things by 10%, only 10%, but that's 20%, makes it 20%, you know what I'm saying? It's double of what we're doing now. So it is not a minor task. There's all those obstacles. It's funny, I started using local food 15 years ago because it tastes better. And then over the years, I've had many birds land on my shoulder and tell me organic farming is good for carbon sequestering, or carbon footprint of shipping produce from the mainland attributes 34% to greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, it's just nonstop. I hear about habitat destruction and bycatch when it comes to sustainable fisheries, and at this point, poor chefs, we just get kind of overwhelmed. We're expected to know about all these things and then make the right decisions and kind of lead the way. And there's, like I started to say, there's, you hear about the land issues, the water issues. There's the average median age of a Hawaiian farmer is every year rate is higher. So I tend not to dwell on those things. At Town, we just did a local food audit for the first time in our 7 years of business, just to really get an idea of how much we actually purchase. And we don't have any grain here, so rice and flour. There's no poultry anymore. There's a little bit of dairy. There's really not a whole lot of the staples. And we found that we were at 47% local. I guess when you're shipping in 92%, that's quite a feat, but that's still, it was eye-opening to me because we are supposedly leading the way in it and doing everything that we can. We could still only reach 47. We're going to try to break 50 next year. What that translated into in a dollar figure is we have 2 little restaurants. I mean, they're little little neighborhood restaurants. Downtown's only open for lunch. Town's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but it's small. It's 55 seats on the corner of 9th and Wildlife. And we bought just over $400,000 of local produce last year. No middleman. So for me, it's just about supporting the local farmers, buying it. I think everyone has different tools at their disposal. Being that the legislative session is in, one of the tools is getting out there and making your voice heard. For me, I tend to vote with my fork. That's a term that was coined by Michael Pollan, who wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma. And he said, vote with your fork. You have 3 votes a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Make one of them count. So that's kind of where we're at. And we recently, in the last couple of years, got Holly Aino Awards for best value. And for me, that's interesting because I think Hawaii's always been about choke food, big, pile it on. And we don't serve big portions, and we're not cheap. But it makes me think maybe the public perception of value is changing a little bit to mean something that's good for Hawaii, good for the Aina, good for your body, good for the community. And maybe I'm a hopeless romantic, but that's kind of where I come from.
Well, local food, it does taste better. And I hear these famous stories of Chef Alan Wong having his Farmers series at his restaurant in town here, and he invites people from all over the place, and he compares a mainland egg and what a local egg would taste like, and then a mainland lettuce, and then a local raised lettuce. And do you agree that the ingredients do taste better?
Well, you get those cardboard tomatoes that are shipped picked green, gassed when they get here to ripen, and yeah, definitely they're better. It's still, people think we're a beautiful place and we have everything year round. There's definitely seasons, so you don't want to have a mango on the menu when it's not mango season. Right now we have a really early mango season, but the mangoes aren't as good as they're going to be in 6 weeks. So things generally, yeah, it doesn't travel, it's better, but there's still a perfect point in a vegetable or fruit's life that you want to eat it. And so it's not just because it's local, it's better.
Now tell me about some of the farmers that you buy from. I want to hear their personal stories.
Farmers, to me, interesting you say that. They're probably the most, I love spending time with farmers. They're so profound, deep thinkers, and I don't know if it's because they've dedicated their lives to feeding other people, and they spend day in and day out with their hands in the soil. It grounds them. But starting from on a large scale, there's a farmer in out of the Kentucky River Basin. His name's Wendell Berry. He's an activist, a poet, a farmer. The guy is one of the deepest thinkers I've ever met. I've read so many pieces on him. He coined a term called co-producers, and it means we're all in together. It's not a linear kind of supply chain. It's a cycle. Everything is interdependent on everything else. So he says something like, eating is an agricultural act. He says, shopping or cooking is a political act. Again, vote with your fork. He even goes as far as to say that farming is a gastronomic act. And I love that because what he's saying is farmers should care from a gastronomic point of view what they're growing. These guys that are growing the cardboard tomatoes obviously don't eat their tomatoes. On a local level, I just went out and picked up a pig from Kahalu this morning, and I sat with my farmer, Glenn Shinsato, and he says to me, Ed, a thriving family business is a reflection of a strong family. Just out of the blue, they come up with these things. Gary Mauna Kea IV and his wife Pukui Mauna Kea IV out in Waianae, just heavy thinkers. They're some of my favorite people to hang out with and to be with.
And you got to cook for the First Lady. How was that like, getting that? Who called you? Tell me about how that came about.
Well, it was APEC, the conference was here. So I think, for one, that it was lucky. We just happened to have all these dignitaries in town. And we got contacted by the State Department, who oversaw APEC. So we did a couple dinners for some, like Hillary Clinton and Secretary Geithner. But then we got a call from the White House, and they said, yeah, well, we would like you to do another lunch that is
Where were
precluded.
you at the time when
Well,
you
they
received
actually
the
called
call?
Kenney, my general manager at downtown, and he's the one that said it to me, and I said, no way. I mean, 1 week prior to the phone call, Forbes magazine had just put out that Michelle Obama is the #1 most powerful voice in the modern food movement. And I mean, that surpassed Marianne Nestle and Michael Pollan and all these Secretary Vilsack, that's part of the Department of Agriculture. I mean, she was #1. I was like, I gotta cook for her? So, and
Do you say, nah, you're just kidding? Is it April Fool's?
I did. I said, nah, it can't be. But it wasn't just a lunch. It really showed that she understood the importance of where food comes from, because the day before the lunch, we actually hosted her out to Mott Organic Farm, where she got to sit, have a really in-depth 45-minute discussion with the youth that run the farm. Got to pick things right out of the soil and taste them right out of the soil. And then we followed it up with the lunch the next day using the produce from the farm. Actually, a couple of the youth, what are they called? The co-managers of the farm came and helped prepare the lunch. So as far as farm to table goes, I mean, it doesn't get any closer to that. These are guys that grew the food, prepared the food, and served her food.
So was it like meeting her at the farm? Like, did she arrive with this whole entourage,
Well,
lots of cars, and
yeah.
were all
Well,
the kids
everyone
waiting
was
for her?
nervous, and yes, there was an entourage. I mean, it's got to be. Unfortunately, it can't be super casual, but we sat there kind of waiting to do the formal greeting, and she's walking towards us, and we're all kind of standing upright, and about 5 feet away, she just goes, "What's happening, y'all? How you doing?" And comes up, and I go to shake her hand, and she just grabs me and gives me a hug. So I mean, yeah, it was. She's a real person.
And so you cooked for the other first ladies? Is that what
Yes.
folks did? Now,
Yes.
what was on the menu?
Well, it was a really light, simple lunch. It was at Kualoa Ranch, which is incredibly beautiful. I think the conversation and the setting was more important than the food, so we kind of downplayed it a little bit. We did a beet salad it was probably 90% ma'o. And then we used some cheese from Nikki Dairy, which is also out in Waianae Valley, actually Lualua Valley. And then the whole lunch we kind of did a east meets west spin, meaning not east meets west as far as geographically, but east side of the island meets west side of the island. So the entree course was most everything sourced from Ko'olapoko, which is out where Kualoa is, and we had fresh fish that was caught the day before. We had limu from He'ia Fish Pond, and then we also did tie in some vegetables and herbs from Ma'o.
Now tell me about Ma'o Farms. A lot of people don't understand the whole concept there, or how that company is running. It started off as a nonprofit.
It's still a nonprofit.
It's still a nonprofit,
right.
But it's doing very well. And tell us about that concept.
Well, it's a 25-acre farm. I think it's the largest organic farm on Oahu. I hate to say statistics like that because I'm not sure, but I think if it's not the largest, it's the second largest. Something that's staggering is I think there's only a dozen or so organic farms on this island, which, yeah, with 1 million people and a dozen, the math doesn't add up. But it's really more than just a farm. Besides growing the best organic produce there is, it is a leadership training program specifically for youth that have come up out on that west side community. So they kind of teach them leadership, life training skills, cultural awareness, all within the context of an organic farm. These students, I think there's something about 40 right now, and they all get a free ride scholarship to Leeward Community College. And they are in a program where they graduate with an associate's degree in community food systems. And on top of that, they are all given a stipend starting at $500 a month, and then based on their performance, it can go up from there. interesting is that, as we all know, that community is a little underserved, and some of these kids at $500 a month are their major wage earner in their family. So it's really offering hope. Again, here's another statistic, I'm not sure if it's correct, but something around 35 youth from that area went to college last year, and more than half of them went through Model Farm. So I like to say, when you're eating the food, you're not just tasting the soil and the life, you're tasting hope and opportunity and hard work and commitment and all these things that have been given to these kids' lives. And the opportunity for them to sit with the First Lady, it reflects it.
How do they, what kind of values do they instill in the kids to get them to get out of bed and wake up before the sun comes up and start getting to work? And then they go to school, many of them after they toil the land all
Yeah, they're
day.
full-time on the farm and full-time students. And I think mentoring is a big part of it. The farm right now is run by 6 co-managers that were all graduates of the program. So they've all come through, they've all worked it. The sense of teamwork and togetherness, maybe peer pressure, I don't know what it is. If someone's falling behind, everyone kind of helps, picks them up and says, come on, let's do this. There's incentives also. If they have a cumulative grade point average, all the kids of higher than 3.0, they all get a dinner at town. And this year, actually every year, they've made the mark. This year we closed a restaurant. We had 50 youth from Waianae all in Kaimuki eating the food that they had grown. And again, that cycle, they're not seeing it end, it just continues.
So what do you think we can do? We have a vote with your fork, right? And what else can local people do to help with this goal of increasing our local food production?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of tools we have in our toolbox, and depending on your time and what you're comfortable with, you could spend some time down at the legislature, offering testimony either for or against certain bills that are up. There's a lot of food-centric bills right now. There's some regarding procurement for food in school lunch programs, which to me I think is incredible. If we could get local food in the school cafeterias, that would be a huge win for the food movement. Again, buy local. Really, to dumb it down, to make it simple, grow food. I think one thing we've lost is that connection to where our food comes from. So we start with the kids, you work in the garden, grow food, cook food together, eat food together. Simple stuff, but it's the way things have always been. I remember growing up with my mom, TV off, put your shirt on, put your napkin on your lap, no elbows on the table. At the time, I didn't get it, but now I see how important it is.
So let's talk about yourself for a little bit. So tell me how you went from being in business and real estate and majoring in business to coming back to Hawaii, where you were born and raised, to be a chef. How did that happen?
Well, there was never any doubt in my mind that I would live here. This is where I'm from. This is where my family is. I've got a deep connection to this place. When I came back, I graduated from college and I went into commercial real estate. Made a decent living, but my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, just realized before I did that it wasn't me. It wasn't, and I'm not going to knock it because it's a great livelihood, but for me it just wasn't right. So we sold all our worldly possessions, traveled around the globe for a year, and I think I had that light bulb epiphany sitting on a street corner in Hanoi, eating a hot bowl of pho on a table with just a bunch of locals. We were sitting on milk crates, laughing, having a good time. We didn't speak the language, and I realized at that point that the ability food has to bring people together really is what attracted me to cooking. So when I came back, I was fortunate. Some good friends of mine had just opened a little restaurant in Kailua, and I went to them and said, "Hey, can I have a job?" And they said, "Sure." And I started making salads for $7 an hour, and I was like, "Gee, $7 an hour! I can't even pay rent." But the passion that these people that I worked for displayed, and the smiles on people's faces when I would look out the counter and I'd see them eating something that I made. It was contagious. And like I said, I started cooking. I saw the local food potential because of the flavor, and then just as time's gone along, it's a lot bigger issue, and I try not to. Yeah, that's another question.
Now, what it was like? How did you start your first restaurant? How hard was that in Hawaii to start a restaurant business? Because the restaurant business is probably the hardest business that you can actually be in the nation. And very few, only 5% of the restaurants do actually survive that started. And what do you think that you did a little differently than the other startups?
Well, I think you kind of answered your question in that opening a restaurant's not hard. It's running a restaurant that's hard. We see restaurants open all the time. I just looked out of curiosity. I looked up the Holly Aino Awards for the last dozen years, and of the best new restaurants of the last 12 years, 6 of them are no longer in existence.
Wow.
So these are restaurants that supposedly, if they were voted the best, had great food, great service, great location, something that earned them that best title, but for some reason they're not still around. I think that's what's really helped us out is this commitment to community, commitment to local economy and to our farmers. In 2008, 2009, when we all experienced that downturn, we continued to see growth. Small growth. We grew, I think, 1% to 2% a year through that time. But at that same time, there are other restaurants, there were farms, there were businesses that were closing left and right. So I think if people wanted to spend their money, which people are going to do, they wanted to spend their money in a place that they feel is going to a good cause. So that was, I think that's really been a saving grace. In your menus,
do you promote that you buy as much as you can locally?
Well, our motto is local first, organic whenever possible, and with aloha always. And it's on the bottom of the menu now. We print the menu every day based on what comes in the door. So we've kind of had to change things a little bit. People at first were like, I want to have the fish like I had it last time, but now I think it's more exciting because they don't know what they're going to get. After all this time, though, we do have some items that if we were to take them off, there would be a mutiny. So
now, which items are those?
We do an ahi tartare. It's a little. And from a culinary standpoint, ahi tartare is like a bad word. It is so 90s. I hate to say it, but it's one of these things we do on a little crispy risotto cake, and we have some like chopped raw ahi with some herbs and lemon. The hot and cold, I think people really enjoy. Our pastas, risottos, we can never change, but the accompaniments can change. We have a grass-fed beef that comes from the Big Island we get through Kulana, and it sells like crazy. So.
And then how did you get into the other restaurant? Did the Art Academy call you? Or
well, that's a state building. It's owned, it's run by Department of General Services. State Foundation of Culture of the Arts has the museum upstairs, and they occupy much of the building. And it's really weird. I had been in New York City on a vacation, went to the Museum of Modern Art and went to their restaurant called The Modern. And while I was eating, I was thinking, God, there's something about the visual arts, fine arts, and culinary arts that just complement each other. And I thought, God, I've got to do something in a museum. And within 2 weeks of coming back, a request for proposal came across my desk from DAGS, or from SFCA, that said we're looking for an operator for our cafe. And we went through a whole dog and pony show and interviews and cooked for people and met dozens of people, and we ended up getting the lease for it.
So tell me what your life is like. Are you in heaven? Are you just so happy to be able to find your passion?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't wake up in the morning and say, I got to go to work. I love what I do. There's something, again, about feeding people and the connection to bringing people together. Yeah. I mean, I do wish I had a little more time with my kids, but they come and they cook at the restaurant, they help out. So, yeah.
Now we have just a few minutes left. What is your final message to the people, and your hopes and vision for the future of Hawaii in terms of agriculture and local food products?
Oh boy, these are the ones that always get me. for me, I mean, again, it's. I think going back to what I said earlier, it's understanding where the food comes from, planting food, cooking food, and eating food together. Those are really, and that probably shoots myself in the foot, because then people won't come out to eat at the restaurants. But really, to me, that's the true essence of it. And I think if people get back to some of these classic values, the values of being at the table, the other things might fall into place. Go to farmers markets, buy local. Spread the word. There's a lot of things that are in front of the legislature right now. Some bills that are asking for government intervention in certain things. But I think if they don't go through, just working with each other and spreading the word, there's definitely, like I said, a groundswell, and there's a movement that could keep things moving forward. Not to discredit what's happening at the legislature, but I think are we almost done?
Almost done.
Let me give you a little. There was a movie the other night, Ingredients by Bob Bates, and they highlighted some people in this modern movement that are doing great things. And what those people did, I think they weren't people that dwelled on the fact that we have a shortage of land, or we have a shortage of water, or there's no one that wants to farm, or if we run out of food, if the shipping lanes close, we run out of food in 10 days. I think there were just people that saw these obstacles and said, let's navigate through them and make a difference. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
We want to thank you so much for coming, and so I want to thank Chef Kenney for explaining his passion and helping to unite our people with food. And I want to remind all of you out there how important it is, as he says, to vote with your fork. Make it a goal after you see this today to have at least one of your meals to ensure that the majority of that meal was raised in Hawaii by local people. Just doing that once a day can help to ensure our future and enable our food security. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kymberly Pine, and we'll see you next time. Aloha.